Everybody please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll call the meeting. Roll call.
Mayor Westgard,
Yes.
Steinkamp,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Waltman.
Yes.
Before we do anything else, we have a certificate accommodation for our Detective George Athen, and I'm going to read that for everybody tonight before we start. It is with great pleasure to present Detective George Athen this official commendation for exceptional service. Detective Athen has distinguished himself as an exemplary officer with the Lakeview Police Department. Specifically, between July 23 and February of 24, you have taken the role of detective in the department's primary investigator. During this time, you have personally taken over 553 calls for service, conducted several high-profile investigations, and completed over 25 search warrants, and filed over 47 charges while assisting other officers with an additional 27. The impact of this investigations has directly affected the lives of victims, the people of Lakeview and Wall Lake, and the perception of this department. During this time, Detective Athen has conducted an investigation for child endangerment, conspiracy with intent to manufacture, deliver methamphetamine, possession of a controlled substance, paraphernalia, and unauthorized possession of a firearm. 2 suspects were arrested, with one resulting in a conviction with a 15-year prison sentence. Conducted an investigation for child endangerment, intent to deliver marijuana, possession of controlled substance, and paraphernalia. 3 suspects were arrested and charged with this crime. While conducting an investigation into a domestic abuse case, Detective Athen determined that the victim was being brutally assaulted, raped, and held captive. The suspect was immediately arrested and charged with several counts of domestic abuse, sexual assault, false imprisonment, and several drug offenses. Detective Athen has responded to an incident of a subject who assaulted another person with a dangerous weapon. During the call, Detective Athen quickly identified and located the subject and secured the scene. During the investigation, it was revealed that the subject was a family member of the victim and had intended to commit murder. During this time, he had conducted an investigation of a stolen vehicle. During the investigation, evidence was recovered pointing the suspect, resulting in charges being filed and arrests being made. Detective Athen has conducted an investigation into a burglary case at the Camp Crescent. During the investigation, it was determined the vehicle used in the crime was stolen, along with several items including cash. Several subjects were arrested and charged. We also spearheaded an investigation into 2 wanted subjects. One subject had been evading law enforcement for several months. Because of Detective Athen's dedication and tenacity, both subjects were apprehended without incident. We also developed and taught Lakeview's training plan for active threat shooter incidents. This critical training gave officers the necessary tools needed to ensure if an incident ever happened, they had the confidence and courage to neutralize the threat. Furthermore, you have been a pillar within the community and a leader within the department. As a direct result of your actions, the cities of Lakeview and Wall Lake have become safer and more enjoyable for all members of the community. Your professionalism and dedication reflect highly not only on yourself, but also the image and reputation of the Lakeview Police Department. If you would step up here, George. Exceptional service as a detective with the Lakeview Police Department, you are a pillar within the community and a leader with the department. As a result of your actions, the cities of Lakeview, Wall Lake have become safer and more enjoyable for members of the community. Your professionalism and dedication reflect highly not only on yourself, but on the image and reputation of the Lakeview Police Department. Congratulations.
Thank you.
George, can you give me some information? Can you just send me some information?
I think he's gonna send an email to you.
Thank
Okay, we'll move on to public forum. Okay, consent agenda, any additions or corrections? Need a motion to approve?
I'll make that motion.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Stankham,
Yes.
Justin,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Waltman.
Yep.
Okay, we have a building permit from Randy and Chris Blake, all signed and sealed, Eric.
Yep.
Which motion to approve the building permit?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call.
Waltman,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Stankham.
Yes.
Okay, we have a quote from Viking to repair the aerator at the water plant. Jason?
So we talked previously, the aerator is part of our requirement for our DNR permit. The aerator goes into the clear well. The coupler that's on it, the internal gasket, I believe is what's gone. It's leaking water. So not all the water goes into the clear well. The only way you can change this is they have to bring a crane in, they have to lift it up, take that coupler off, put a new coupler in. And that's what the quote's for. And the other portion of the quote is the cleaning of the clear well, which was part of the budget of what was supposed to be done with that. So it'll all be in conjunction with each other. The fixing of the coupler and then the cleaning of the clear well.
Does this go back against that bond company?
This is the water plant, not the wastewater plant.
I'm sorry. How are we gonna do it?
You tried.
I make a motion, we move forward with that.
I'll second it.
Roll call.
Beckman,
Yes.
Stankham,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Waltman.
Yes.
Did they say when they were gonna get started, or okay?
He did not. I'm assuming it's within the next 30 days because of the price of the quote. But I would tell you it's probably within, we'll say 60 days. Viking's normally fairly on top of it.
Okay, we'll move on to consideration of support for the trail sidewalk extension with the rib replacement on High Street.
About the stormwater repair project. on
Oh, yeah, I
Drive.
guess we're gonna do that first. Whitey's.
So what you have is the two quotes from what we discussed previously, and this talked about fixing the panels in the road that are starting to break and everything. If you look at the two quotes, I tried to color code it to make it as easy as possible, and then when you look at the Excel spreadsheet, that gives the actual breakdown. When you look at the Excel spreadsheet, it also, if we didn't do the grading and seeding, the contractor didn't do that, they would take money off. My personal opinion on that is we need to have them do that, especially because it's gonna create erosion control and not allow silt and mud and dirt and rocks and stuff like that to go into that body of water that's behind Mr. Steinkamp's house. I believe to have the contractor do it, since they're there doing it, they'll grade it, finish it, and we're gonna cause Mr. Whitey's yard to be back to where it should be in a shorter amount of time period.
Do you have a preference on the M4 or the C4 as far as is that?
The difference between the two styles of concrete, the M4, they can make it up, they'll pour it at noon on this day. We can open that portion of the road up the next day and they can pour the next section of that road, because it's gonna have to be two pours anyways because of where it comes across without shutting the street down completely. I would recommend personally the M4 because of that ability to open up the street the very next day. If we use the C4, the curing time for 100% cured is 28 days is what they say, but you can technically start driving on it anywhere from 3 to 7. So I do recommend the M4.
If my math's right, it's only $274.
How much of a difference? As long as it's not a huge difference in the
Right.
quality, like how much longer the stuff's gonna last if it's quick.
From the contract, not being a concrete guy, I had to talk to the contractors. They all recommend the M4. They say for a project like this, the M4 will be perfectly able and content for the process that we need.
Okay.
If I'm looking at this correctly, Blackhawk is the low bid on this.
That is correct.
Wouldn't that include, the 21,113 includes the grading and seeding, right?
Correct.
I make a motion we move with Blackhawk, the 21,113 with the grading and seeding.
Second that.
Roll call.
Beckman,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Waltman,
Yes.
Stankham.
Abstain. Just so everybody knows, this has been going on for 9 years, we're finally getting to fix it. Not because it's Whitey's, it needed to be done. Now we can talk about the extension on the bridge.
Yeah, and this is just basically a thought process. When we're in the final stages of the design work for the bridge replacement on High Street. It's been presented to us for consideration that we might want to include a sidewalk extension on the bridge itself. That comments one is if, you know, purposes of if the trail were to come to fruition from Sac City and then come down that road, it would be nice to have an extension on there that doesn't, you know, so that the bikers wouldn't have to, you know, come completely on the bridge and then back off. It would be, Nick Booth has checked into it, it would be covered under the grant, we have up to $1.5 million. It would come under the grant as far as the construction cost, so it would be covered under the grant. It would not be covered, we would have to, you know, there's some design elements that would have to come into play with the engineers putting an extension on it. I don't know exactly what that cost would be. It basically is, does the council want to make that consideration? If so, then we'll proceed forward with what that is. I know Nick, the Board of Supervisors, Nick has talked to the board and they're certainly in agreement with them. There is a certain degree of cost share with this, with the engineering fees, but some of that might be more on us versus on the county because Nick might become the administrator over the bridge project where we wouldn't have to outside pay, but in a sense it would be an internal exchange of engineering fees with Nick to be the administrator on the project itself. When it actually starts construction and he has the abilities and he's got all the licenses to do so. So basically it's just a conversation with the council that do you guys want to have Jason and I proceed with that conversation with Nick and the engineering group to go that way.
Recommended.
I don't think it's gonna add much to the engineering that you're paying for anyway, because you're not extending the length and the trajectory of the bridge, just width. So,
Yes,
so
yep.
the main engineering part will pay no matter what.
The-
Just to extend it a little wider, I don't think that's gonna really affect too much on the engineering
Yeah,
side.
some of the consideration would be is the movement of our electrical utility and Mid-American. There's pieces that Mid-American owns out there that come off to our substation. And then, you know, some additional easement that might be required to get it accomplished, but they didn't seem to be overly concerned about it. But basically, the next process is if you guys want us to move forward with it, then Jason and I will make those steps with the engineering group and see where it goes.
I make a motion that we support that project.
Second.
Roll call.
Waltman,
Yes.
Beckman,
Yes.
Frank,
Yes.
Jensen,
Yes.
Stankham.
Yes.
Okay, resolution 24-9 is approving the development agreement, Susan does.
So basically this, we've had the public hearing, we've done all of the paperwork. This really is just making sure that the development agreement and then you've got, you know, the real estate contract and basically allows us to do the final transfer. You know, this is a little itty bitty piece of land that we're transferring over, so there isn't a whole lot to it. The development agreement does, you know, say certain things with them actually, you know, building, you know, the construction and that kind of stuff. But other than that, it's a pretty basic agreement, and then just so that we can get the property transferred.
I'll make that motion that we approve the resolution 24-9.
Second.
Roll call.
Frank,
Yes.
Waltman,
Yep.
Stankham,
Yes.
Johnson,
Yes.
Beckman.
Yes.
Okay, number 10 is consideration to receive and file bids received February 8th regarding construction of the community center and defer action on the bids until March 4th.
Do you wanna maybe move 11 and 10 around? Do you care?
No, I don't care.
We have to get through the reports and
Okay.
then move on to that.
We'll do the administrative report first.
My administrative report, I took a little vacation, Thursday and Friday and went to Arizona with my spouse on a business trip for him. But I have been working on the budget. That's pretty much my life has been the budget. Trying to finalize some things and get some stuff wrapped up and working on side things with other items that we've had, going on with the community center and, just other budgetary items in general. So that's pretty much me in a nutshell. Go ahead, Jason.
I also was on vacation, but I have a list for you. We pulled a transformer from Mr. Moore's pits per his request. We moved the transformer to the shop. It was completely covered in graffiti, so the guys have been stripping it so we can get the graffiti off and then we can repaint it. That is a 750 transformer, which now puts us having a spare one in the yard, which we talked about that at one of the council meetings. That's gonna save us quite a bit of money by being able to have that sitting, on hand. We cleaned equipment, took pictures of the ditch witch since we got the, new vac. That way we can work on getting that one sold. They shut off the secondary service to Mr. Moore's pits per his request, turned off the lights at the pickleball courts. All the employees' reviews were gone through with Teresa and myself, and then we gave, Trent and I gave each employee their annual review per our contract with the union, everything and what it says. We had a fault in the electrical line at the golf ball store. The guys are working on trying to find that still. Fixed tire on the backhoe, hung disconnects, moved some snow, sanded some intersections, worked on sampler at the wastewater plant, amp checks, took down the Christmas lights off of Main Street, placed rock on Hanson Street to fix the potholes, changed the oil in the red dump truck, changed fuel filter also in the red dump truck, fixed the leaky lines on the backhoe and the grappler for the skid loader, inventoried our signposts and ordered new signposts. We also hung some new signs now that we know where they were supposed to go. We still have one more to hang. Where it was initially supposed to go, we cannot put it there because we have too much electrical lines where it's supposed to go. So we have to find a spot further down the road in order to put it so we don't mess with our electrical system. We had a water leak on Lakewood. It's stopped leaking, but we're still working on figuring out where that line goes. We think it's an old abandoned line, but we need to do some more investigation on that. Fix the dumpsters for the campground. We met with an engineer to start coming up with a plan to fix the water system, whether it's the water plant, the water tower, and then our pressure area where we have issues. I talked to Power Solutions today about the sirens. I know the one siren sounds like a weak dog. We are working on that. However, Power Solutions just got the frequencies for the radio read. He guaranteed me that they would be installed no later than March 19th. However, he is attempting to do it sooner. But he asked that he could have a minimum of 30 days waiting on Alpha Wireless to do the programming into it and then send them to him with shipping and everything. He doesn't want to say he'll be here next week because who the heck knows on what shipping does. So that's kind of the gist of what we've been doing.
That Lakewood water line, is that something that's gonna need to be replaced? Is it, I mean, the main line out there?
It was.
No, it's not the main, it's a service line.
Service line, okay.
We believe, from my understanding, there used to be an old hotel out there, or apartment.
Yes.
So we believe, based off of the size, it was the service line for that. But until we do some more investigating, there's a couple houses down there, we found the curb stops. We're gonna get with those homeowners, try shutting those curb stops off to make sure that it's not their service line. And if it is their service line, that's a really long service line. So until we do the actual investigation portion of it, it's fixed, it's not leaking, but we can't dig up any more of the road and abandon it completely until we do the more intensive investigation of it.
Can you hook up to it with a locate machine? Is it galvanized line, you said?
It's Trent, and I was on vacation, so I gotta go off what I'm told. They believe it could be galvanized. It either started off as 1.5 inches, but it's probably about 1.25 inches now, based off of the time frame in there. And with our locator that we had, it goes to the other side of the road, and we still get a detection for it, and then it stops. So we don't know if there was like a curb stop there that was abandoned however many years ago. But eventually we'll have to dig it back and cut it off at the main, at the corp stop.
Okay. And then, a couple of meetings ago, you were talking about bigger snow bucket or whatever for your backhoe. Or what you talked about maybe looking at a payloader. I drove back there in the city shop. We still have the old snow bucket for our previous backhoe. Can't we get the brackets converted over to use on the new backhoe?
I'll have to look into that. I can't answer that.
I mean, like Miller over in Odebo could weld them on, or King up in Sac City to convert it to, because I think when we bought the new backhoe, you guys probably remember, I know they talked about they got the biggest bucket they had for that backhoe, but our old bucket wouldn't work because of the quick connect brackets, but that old bucket could be converted to that.
I will look into that tomorrow.
All right, thanks.
Thank you, Jason. Chief?
Yeah, I got our monthly incident report deal here. We've had 422 total calls for service, 5 charges were filed. One of the big things we did on Friday was we did a training at the school, an active shooter, kind of like what we said in George's accommodation part. That was really cool. We had quite a few members of the fire department out. They really got into it if you watch the video online. It's kind of cool because it started out pretty slow, didn't look like much difference, but by the end of it, man, they were moving everything out and throwing papers, throwing crap at the guys and stuff, and it was really good in training. And it really benefited the entire county and not just us. So we had us, Sac City there, and Sac County. So that was a really good deal. What else? Last week I got to escort the 2 state guys down, so that was pretty cool. They had a get together, a speaker at the school, so I got to sit into that for a little bit until I got called out. So, and other than that, that's about it.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. Okay, now we'll go back to the consideration, review, and final bids.
So basically, what you have, in the packet, I think there should have been, the bid tab is in the packet, I believe. Yep. So we opened up the bids on February 8th. The bid tab here, our low bid was a little over $2,228,327. High bid came in at $2,861,709. We had 5 bids. Talked to one of the sheets, and as we go forward, Bob sent a letter here of thought processes of what could happen to try and save some money so that we could get down to more of where it doesn't save a lot, but it might save some things. The conversation would be, right now the building is 140 by 120. We could put that down to 100 feet. 100 feet one way and 140 the other way. So we could take it down from 140 feet down to 120 feet, which would save us, maybe about $50,000. You don't save really a whole lot on the interior because that's just airspace. It's not, you're just saving exterior walls is really what you're saving. Everything else on the interior stays the same. We do also have, I guess, and Brett, maybe you want to talk a little bit about that. I guess the final recommendation from Bob was to, we have a 30-day bid. The bid's good for 30 days, is that you guys can just review and receipt the bids in tonight, and then defer actually awarding the contract until March 4th. If there's concerns about, trying to come up with, what the dollars are, if there's any other, we can agree with the low bidder and try and come up with some ways to value it out, value engineer, some of the cost out a little bit. So that was Bob's recommendation is, we can certainly wait till March 4th. We don't have a resolution to accept it or award a contract tonight. So really this, it is basically being a deferment, but a conversation of the bids, those receipts, and, how we go forward. So, I don't know if Brent wants to speak on what.
I guess I'll go ahead and I'll just, kind of outline, where our finances are with the project and everything and stuff. On behalf of the Hometown Pride Committee and the Lakeview Foundation, I'd like to share with you the overall financial report of the Community Center project. A copy of the report with the figures I will be citing is in your packets, I think.
Yep, I gave them a copy of the
Okay,
Yep.
great. So on the first page, you'll find 3 tables outlining some of the sources of funding. Those include $836,632 in total from grants, $712,850 from private donations, and $85,000 from in-kind services. When we add in the $500,000 from the city and TIF funds and a $20,000 commitment from the county, our fundraising efforts have yielded a grand total of $2,154,482. I think most of us would agree that's an impressive sum for a community of our size, and I'm very proud of the hard work that our groups and many supporters have done in reaching those numbers. As for expenses, they appear on the back page of that form there. Thus far, we have spent $316,261. Much of that was used for purchases related to land, site preparation, and engineering fees. It is worth noting that over 70% of those expenses were covered by grants or in-kind donations. And below that table of expenses there, you will see another table which is the summarization of the project's finances. After our expenses, our campaign is left with a current total of $1,838,221. And then at the bottom of that page, there's a table showing the gap between Sandy Construction's initial bid and then our current funds. That gap is $390,106. That is a big number, but we have initiated conversations with the engineer, as Teresa said, to look at options how we might lower that bid cost. It's also worth pointing out that the bid is for a premium version of the building, and that we are not committed to the specific version that was quoted by Sandy Construction. That's based on what we promised in our grants and our promotional material and such. And finally, any major changes to the plan would need the City Council's approval. Tonight, we are asking for this council to award Sandy Construction a contract based on the bid as is, but on the understanding that the council and our committee will work together on exploring cost-saving options. We are urging action since we need to make these reimbursement requests, since we need to make some reimbursement requests here in the coming months to make sure that our grant money is not at risk. On our end, the Hometown Pride Committee and Lakeview Foundation will continue our work to cover the project's funding gap through grant applications and private donations. Plus, I will add that there are some funds on this committed to this project which do not appear on this fundraising report. Recently, we had a donor pledge a deferred gift of $250,000 towards establishment of an endowment for the community center. This fund will be directed towards covering any future operating costs and should alleviate some concerns that this project will be a drain on city funds. Again, those funds are for endowment, they're not for the construction phase, and that's why they do not appear on this report. What I have on this report is just strictly for construction.
Can them funds be used for like furnishings and stuff on the inside, signage?
Possibly, that would be up to the donor, what they specifically designate. Finally, I want to express my appreciation to my fellow committee members, city leaders, donors, and anyone who has supported this project along the way. Are there any questions?
What kind of grants, are you still think that this year there's some additional grants that are available out there?
Yeah, there's 2 that we have in mind specifically. There's a few more that we're looking at that might fit, be compatible with this project. There's one coming up at the end of the month here that would be, anywhere from $50,000 to, like $80,000. You know, like looking further ahead, the Sac County Endowment Fund, you know, that'd be another grant that'd be eligible for, when that comes due later in the year, so there's definitely, you know,
Maybe 100 in additional funding through grants?
Probably,
maybe this year?
yeah,
That'd be a
yeah.
safe, that'd be a not.
I mean, there could be more, I'd like to say that there's more,
Yeah,
but,
we're looking at the
you
low,
know,
just to be
yeah,
conservative. as
100
much
be
as possible.
reasonable.
I have a 50,000 that I'm working on too.
Perfect,
so.
good. One of the things in DKs is to reduce the length of the building from 140 to 120. I'm not involved in this, this is your baby, I think that's a mistake. I think you need to keep it as big as you can, and anything we can add on at a later time, can't add 20 feet. That's gonna be
I
tough.
mean, I agree with you on that, you know, I mean, it's, I guess what I'm saying here is that all options need to be on the table as far as what we look at, you know, let's hear what they come up with, and then decide from there what, you know, what we can do to, cost and what we want to really keep. As far as, you know, with the 12,000 square foot building, that's what was in our grants, that was what was in our promotional material. The 14,000 square foot building, that came on a later date. We use that in our bid, but we're not really committed to that based on our grants.
The 12,000 square feet does seat the 380, which is what we
Correct.
promoted from the very
So what would
beginning.
the 14,000, what would that be, what would your number be
I
on
think
that?
we're looking at between 400 and 420 for capacity there.
Okay.
So I mean, you know, a substantial increase in capacity.
I guess my concern, or question, I guess, I don't know how to word that, would be, as this, I mean, we had a surprise last week, right? $100,000 showed up last week that we didn't know about. So you pour the footings for 120,000 square foot, or a 12,000 square foot building, because that's what you got, and somebody else shows up with more money. You can't add on to that.
Very true.
You can take the garage off now, and somebody shows up with some more funding, like that, you can add the garage easy to that type, you know? So I think the cosmetic things are the smart things, because, you know, I've heard it from a number of people in the last little bit. Once you put a spade in the ground, I think there's more money out there. You know, those investments that a lot of people made 3 years ago, they weren't, I don't want to say a pipe dream, but it was an idea and it was a vision. I think that if they start seeing some actual movement, I think people are going to open up the checkbooks again. So I would, the 390, I think you guys can pull off 390,000. I don't think that's too bad of an issue in my opinion. So I think you guys are doing a great job. I'm excited for this.
Thank you.
We won't be able to take action because we don't
No.
have a resolution tonight.
You don't,
right?
yeah, we don't have a resolution to actually take action, because I kinda wanted to get our numbers in a row for you all and say, okay, this is what, you know, if you wanna, if we're gonna come to an agreement with Sandy Construction on anything that we might wanna pull out, we can agree to that, the bid's good for 30 days. I felt, you know, if you've raised 100,000 and got the 250 committed for another 2 weeks, who knows what we might be able to come with that might crunch that down a little bit. I mean, I've got a preliminary budget set for, you know, between January of 2025 to get us through the end of the fiscal year, but you have a lot of upfront costs, you know, that right now on paper, that doesn't look good, because you've got, you know, you've got insurance that we have to pay for, we've got, you know, your liquor license you have to pay for, if that's an annual thing, so, but at the end of the day, you've got, you know, you're starting out, but you've got some, you know, initial costs that are gonna, you know, we're gonna have to cover. I wanted to nail down a little bit, now that we have the bids in hand, is what additional engineering fees are gonna cost us to get us through. I kinda have an estimate on a percentage, but based on, that was, you know, based on a little bit, so we gotta put those numbers in, so that's probably gonna be in excess of 100 grand for us to get through, you know, the final engineering, you know, piece for them to see the project through. So those, you know, those are added costs that we haven't figured into just the contract. So that's why I kind of wanted a little bit longer to kind of peruse what, between Bob and, you know, Veenstra and Kay, what actually are we looking at for costs to get us through. We can look at, you know, the parking lot, and the council's got this, I know you don't have it yet, I didn't get a chance to send it to you. You know, we can always add rock to the parking lot, so we might be able to take some of that out of the initial costs, and look at that. I would agree to the statement that you can't make the building bigger. If you commit to a smaller building, that's what you've committed to. You can't make the building any bigger than what, you know, if you go smaller, you can't go bigger. And I know that was one comment, that is it big enough? Is it gonna be big enough for what we want to do with it? That's, you know, between 40 and 60,000, because you're basically taking, air out, and you're losing space on the side. And that's gonna be impactful on, you know, where the bathrooms are, and impactful on where the serving room and that little extra conference room that we kind of had put in there, and that's where it's most impactful, in my opinion, not necessarily in the main ballroom. So I think, you know, and the other reason why I just kind of wanted the council to absorb all of this and have a conversation, because a lot of us have been gone and out of town and different things, so that we could make a solid decision, because this is an important one.
Is there, I guess, my question would be, is there a way we could make this a little bit faster? I mean, if we need to wait on a little bit, I mean, fine, I understand, but I am concerned about the grants, you know, losing some of that.
Right,
And everything's up in-
the biggest
Do we have to
grant
wait
that
2
we
weeks,
have.
or could we, like, say, schedule another meeting, say, like, in a week or so?
Right, the biggest one is the CAT grant. We have to put in a reimbursement claim before April 6th to do that, to start taking that grant and accepting those dollars. Yeah, I mean, that's up to the council. I know that, you know, we're talking about various meetings if they wanna meet before March 4th. That's certainly
I
up to
think
them.
that, I agree with that, but I look at it on the other side, I wanna make sure Sandy has us on a slot, that we're not delayed any longer. You know, the quicker that we can get this thing going, the better off it is. We've been talking about it a long time, and I think it's time to get it going.
Nice to move on it.
So I'm open to another meeting earlier to get this thing, so that we can get a resolution in. And especially if there's an opportunity to look at the contract and make some adjustments. We're a long ways away from having to decide whether or not we want to do a lean-to or an actual garage. We got a ways to go before we can figure that out. Like I said, an extra dollar might show up that we're unprepared for, that changes everything. But the main structure, that concrete footings of the actual building and the beginning of that, we're a number of months away from that actually being up, before some of those decisions really have to be made. If there's an opportunity to make some change orders in it, I think that we can do that. Seeing all the possibilities of taking off are fine based on what we have now, but like I said, money just showed up last week. We had money, and I think more will continue to do that. And so if there's change orders and adjustments, that's fine. I don't think we're bidding on the full total, because we don't know for sure what we're gonna be at with money when it comes time to make that final payment next November, December, whenever, however long
Right.
it takes to build these things.
Yeah.
But what happens when that money doesn't show up and we've already committed to this thing?
Well, we haven't committed, that's what these changes, we have time to make the changes on whether we don't rock the parking lot and sort of concrete the parking lot, or we put a
Everybody wants
garage
to
up.
hurry this up now and get it done before these grants go, and I understand that. But what happens when the money doesn't come? Who's gonna fund this thing?
Can I answer that question? So we've done some brainstorming to exactly that, Mike, because I share that same wonder of we start building and then we need additional funds to fill in that gap. And the great news is that we have a very strong committee that has lots of great ideas that we're committed to help, you know, when that building is built, that we would easily be able to go in and host some very low overhead, high return on investment type of events, where we can do an event on a Saturday, and then we can bring in, you know, $10,000 or $20,000 that night with an event that is sponsored. And you know, I'm accustomed to organizing those type of things and doing them. Having a single event that brings in nearly $100,000 is not out of the realm. So once we have that space, I think we could do IOU is not the proper term, but certainly we would have a phenomenal opportunity to bring people in, and we'd be able to raise money through events. But we would still need this space to do that. And we're committed to doing those things. And we're not in the position to have done all this work for this many years and then say, oh, sorry, we're not gonna meet the goal. And we've been highly committed to raising as much money as we can. So does that give you some insight there?
It's still pretty cloudy. I mean, the fact that when it comes down to the dollars being not there, and the city's gotta commit to this thing, and we got infrastructure within this community that needs addressed, and we got the majority of the citizens that are not in favor of this thing,
That's your opinion.
Excuse me.
Oh, no.
Well, there's an easy way to
It's a
fix
silent
it.
majority.
If we know, so we don't, Teresa just explained to us, we might have another $100,000 in expenses coming in for engineering fees, approximately. So that widens that gap, or that takes away the savings from everything, and I agree with you, don't make it smaller, make it bigger, of the 61,000 that we can take out of there. So, got another 40,000 on top of the 390 that we're short. Does that make sense? My math making sense so far? And then we don't have any figures for the furnishings or all the stuff on the inside yet. Do you have them numbers yet, by chance?
We have an estimate of that, back when we budgeted for that, you know, we're looking at like $50,000 for that, perhaps.
For tables and chairs? And
Correct.
I don't know what else you gotta put inside there, TVs maybe, or,
Yeah, what's not figured in is the tables, the chairs, the fridge and freezers, and an ice maker. Everything else was built into the contract, the walk-in cooler, all of those kinds of things were built into the contract.
We do have a donor for some of the appliances though, just waiting to find out what we need.
And, you know, and I keep hearing from people, that we're waiting for the commitment to actually do it before they actually say they're gonna give money, and I've been hearing that more and more, as the project's getting closer, especially after this last $100,000 donation, so, you know, I know we've had our differences and stuff, Mary and stuff, but I have all the confidence in the world that you're gonna, be able to close that gap
Yeah,
pretty quick,
agreed.
as we get going. So I guess, you know, and I wanna make sure we get Sandy on board to start the project, and, I guess I'm not worried that we're not gonna be able to come up with the money to do the project.
Thank you, Dave.
I think if we reflect on how the community has come together for other things to support it, we can clearly see that, whether it's the sip and sample and how much that has grown and people participating and supporting that, Stone Pier concerts, and I envision our community attitude towards raising dollars and making sure that our community center's off to a great start is there 100%.
Yeah, look at Chris's.
Yeah, right,
We were hoping to put up, as on the committee of that, we were hoping to maybe get 10. And what we ended up with 40, I think,
Yeah.
and it was all donated money. Our town is very supportive, and I think we need to go with it. Look at how much we have already.
Yeah, I think
I'd like
that's
to mention also as far as the library, we've gone through three constructions since 1986 at the library, and the funds have come in. People are going to respond, they want this.
And having that endowment fund that you just talked about, really,
That does matter.
That is new
Takes a
news,
lot of weight
and
off.
I think that should alleviate, you know, some of the concerns that from the beginning that, you know, this will become drains. That will be.
Is that something that's per year, Brent? Or is it, what's that conversation, or is there an agreement that would lay probably some of that out, just as I'm trying to
That's kind of,
budget?
you know, I don't wanna give you the wrong information, so I better look at the information again. And
Okay.
it's not, I don't think I have all the details yet. So I better just look before I
Okay,
put
yeah,
any information out
I
there.
don't, yeah,
I
you
don't wanna put out
you
the
don't
wrong
wanna,
information and-
I'd rather have it be spread out,
Yeah.
that this is what, you know, because that would help on a shortfall, on those shortfall years that might cover operating expenses that might not meet the revenue side, is all what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely, right. I'll get that information
Okay.
at some point.
So we're talking about having a special meeting the next Monday?
If you guys wanna have a special meeting, and we'll get the resolution prepared, and, so that you guys can then make a decision on awarding the contract.
You have another budget meeting lined up for us for next week? That's that way you called it Fun Day?
Yeah.
That's what I thought. I heard that.
We'll just wrap it all up into a nice little
I even brought my
package.
homework.
You
along.
Sure.
as we could always do change orders as we go
Right.
to,
You're gonna have change orders. They're gonna be both ways, you're gonna have expense change orders.
Pluses and minuses, both ways across.
We haven't done a project since I've been on the council that's come in at bid.
Right.
Our joke was 30%.
30%.
I mean-
We gotta feel fortunate that this is coming in 30% over.
The one thing that I will say is, you know, a lot of you guys didn't necessarily see, you know, the behind the scenes or what I know is in the project. Right now, it's a beautiful building. I mean, the interior finishes are very nice. You know, the countertops, the cupboards, the bathroom fixtures, everything. Is there options to make those less? Certainly, I'm sure of it. At the end of the day, you put into it what you get out of it, you know, or you get out of it what you put into it. You know, yeah, you can, there's different things that you can downsize and probably do less expensive without taking away the integrity of the project, but you also have to remember, sometimes when you go to really lowering your standards to a point of being able to get it built, then you're also replacing it in 10 to 15 years as well, because it hasn't lasted, because, you know, it's just like with any, if you know, a house, if you don't put really good materials into it, you don't necessarily get the use and the longevity out of it either.
And
So
then that was kind of my
that's-
point, those are things, we're months away from worrying about
Right.
countertops. And so, you know, if we get this thing going and we need to make a change order because we haven't come up with the funding for it and say, hey, we gotta cut some corners somewhere and let's talk about the cabinets.
But there's not 390,000 worth of cuts. There's
I
not
don't-
300,000.
You can't, you really
Right.
can't tell me
So-
you think there's 390,000 that we're gonna have to come up with, there's gonna be more
Well, that's
money
what we're
showing
short
up.
right now.
Yeah, but I'm saying there's more to be coming, last week we were 490,000
We're talking,
short.
we're
Somebody showed up
talking
with
about it
103.
today.
Which is why I'm
okay,
saying we
so
need to have it so that it's open with change order possibilities to make changes down the line.
I agree on the size of the building, I agree on the change order stuff.
Exactly.
But we're still 390 plus apart. You're forgetting the other 150 that's in there.
Which they're telling us they can do it, just
So
like they
that's-
told us they could come up with the
Or
2 million to begin with.
540,000 we're apart. If we don't get them donations, what are we going to do? We
Well,
up here have to make that
They
decision.
also, worst case, if it falls apart, we got a 15,000 square foot building that we own free and clear about, right? So what business would come in and do that? I sure as heck would. I'd move up here with another division. Worst case scenario, we end up with this building and the property and we own it. Am I right on that?
I don't know how that works with buying the property because it was supposed to be a community center at the 50 grand.
And it'll give it a shot to be a community center. If it does- But if it
I don't
fails, it
know how that
reverts
works.
back to us. Is that
well,
right? It
yeah.
reverts back
We
to the
bought the
city.
ground as a community center.
You bought the ground, you didn't buy it as anything else, you just bought the ground. I don't know, I guess,
So it's
unless,
in, it's in our contract. He gets first right of refusal to buy that ground back if it's not a community center.
I don't know if it's, we were talking about that, if it's, I'd have to look. I know we talked about if it doesn't become a community, if the construction doesn't
Right, if the
happen, but I
construction
don't know
doesn't
that if it's
happen.
not a
Right, no,
whatever
it's,
it
I
might
mean,
be.
if you build on it, they don't get the right to have the ground back because you've already got your building on it. It's only if it doesn't happen
Right,
that they have the right to buy the ground back
but
at what we
we'll double
paid
check
for
on
it.
that and I'll check with
In
Dave.
the end, I'm pretty confident that these people will raise the funds needed for the building as is. And that's
That's the
the
goal.
attitude I'm going with right now.
But they've had 2 years to do this and they haven't accomplished it yet.
What,
$700,000?
201, or 2.1 million.
Yeah.
Pretty good run.
So,
Still short.
Anything else?
Things have gone up.
Well, I mean, I guess the only other thing, cause this kinda goes into what I had for the budget, you know, just so that everybody, you know, I put, together the performa, which I found in the computer, you know, just to try and get us started, cause I have to put together some type of a budget for next year. And this would be us being able to open of January of 2025. Obviously, you're gonna have startup costs, like I said, you're gonna have startup costs, and you're gonna have expenses that aren't going, you know, to be covered by revenues in that first 6 months. It doesn't matter how you look at it, you're gonna have startup costs that are gonna be over and above what your revenues are gonna come in as. Your hopes is that, you know, the backside of the 6 months, you might be able to make up some of that. Conservative, so I've been conservative on the revenue side, just because I don't know, we're starting up. You know, you don't know what we're gonna be, so I took the performa and I kinda took we might be able to bring in a third of that revenue. Not, you know, that's just basically estimations on my part. Revenues, I have to cover expenditures, we can always make more in revenues, doesn't matter. The expenditure side of it, so these are some very rough estimates of what I went down through on, you know, salaries, FICA, IPERS, I don't have workman's, you know, compensation or unemployment insurance in there, I gotta figure that out. You know, just some, you know, uniforms, some training that we, you know, might have to do. And just some very basic building, expenses. You know, your water, sewer expense, your general insurance, because we're gonna have to insure the building. The printing and publishing is very high in this, because in the pro forma, they have, for startup costs, they've got, their first month or so being very high into advertising and promotion and everything else when this gets going. These are roughly what I have figured out for expenses, and this is kind of where I'm going with the expenditure side of it right now. I wanted to get this kind of in front of you. Looks like my difference is my math. I gotta check my spreadsheet, and math's not making sense. But right now, you're looking at almost $50,000 in startup expenses for that first 6 months. And your revenues are bringing in maybe $28,000, just because, you know, depends, if we get to October, November, and we know that it's gonna be able to open in January and we can start booking, I just don't wanna necessarily start booking things for January, February, March until we know that we're guaranteed to be open and there's not gonna be delays. So I think we don't ever have to expend this much out, but I would like to cover the expense side of it, you know, and your revenues, you can always, you know, bring in everything. This is not the capital project budget, this is just our first initial operating budget. Does that make sense? I mean, there's some things that when I was looking at, you know, realistically, you know, at least for your first 6 months off the pro forma, you know, there's some things that I didn't think that, you know, we would ever probably, you know, the trade shows is one of those because we didn't put in a garage. I don't know, I think we're gonna struggle to have a trade show here, but, you know, they don't have any of those in so I took out the trade shows, but everything else I left in and took a third of those revenues and put those in as revenue.
Brent, you'll have more information on that endowment thing, how it can be used and
Yeah.
stuff.
I'll see what I can collect and share that with you.
Okay.
Teresa, what was the reasoning of going from 100% of what we had put in for our revenues and expenses based on feedback from the Small Business Development Corporation, and then reducing that to a third?
Because I basically figured that for the first 6 months of this being open, I didn't know that we would make make those, it's 6 months, so I took it by half.
Okay.
Then I figured, well, January, February, and March,
Uh-huh.
we may not have the bookings anticipated that are on the pro forma, you know.
Because of the opening date.
Because of the opening date, so then I took that basically down and I figured maybe a third.
Okay.
So that was my reasoning behind it, to just estimate on those revenues. So I kinda thought that was, because if, right now, the contract, you know, our contract would say, you know, we get started construction, they're supposed to be done in the middle of December.
Mm-hmm.
We have any weather delays, we have anything, well, obviously by that point in time, we should just be doing interior finish and it shouldn't be
Sure.
a lot of outside stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But at what point, you know, how long are we gonna wait on landscaping, and those are usually your last items in. So, you know, some of it may not be completely finished until the spring, so you just kinda have to estimate, are we gonna start booking and what does that look like?
Thank you.
Okay, well, any more questions?
Well, I'm actually gonna get to watch the next game.
Yes? You want to do anything about budget review?
No, because this is pretty much what I wanted to talk about was the community center. So, I mean, if anybody has any questions, I'm more than trying, you know, to ask, because I didn't know how long this conversation was gonna.
Okay, There's no more business in front of the council?
We want it next week, we'll try and get
Yes.
resolutions.
So just to be clear, we'll be covering the community center then next week?
Yes.
Okay.
If that's what the council wants to do, is if they want it next week, I'll put it on the agenda for next week and we'll cover it then.
Okay.
There's a motion to adjourn. Second? In adjourn.
Yeah, me too.
How you doing?
I will.
Keeping everything in place.
You know this, am I confident they'll come up with the cash? Yeah. Am I confident they'll come up with the cash by the time the time payment is? But, that's where the council has to decide where we want to go.
Boy, I don't know if that recorded.
Hi, I'm the neighbor out there on Lake.